July 3rd, 1956. The beginning of a red-white-red success story that continues today. The history of the Österreichische Mineralölverwaltung Aktiengesellschaft, in short, OMV. As a result of the negotiations of the Austrian State Treaty, Austria takes oil and gas production, processing and marketing into its own hands. The local pioneers immediately begin modernizing the oil and gas business, making it state-of-the-art. The first phase is in 1957. Gas flows in the Auersthal natural gas station for the first time. 2 years later, Baumgarten comes on stream, which is still a very important central gas hub for all of Central Europe. Then another milestone in 1960. The new Schwechat refinery comes on stream, a clear sign of the reconstruction. Marta and Europe. Who still remembers this? In the mid-60s, OMV handles the entire value chain for the first time with the integration of its own sales organization. But just a few years later, it's bye-bye Marta, hello Aral. The two brand names Marta and Europe are replaced with Aral and Elan. OMV is building up to 30 new filling stations every year. (1968), a historic year. On June 1st, OMV becomes the first company in Central Europe to sign a gas import agreement with the Soviet Union. The agreements are still extended regularly today. This is what stability and an active partnership look like. From Trieste across Carinthia to Schwechat. In 1970, the Adria-Wien oil pipeline comes on stream, which still carries 95% of the crude processed in Austria today. And because that worked so well, the Trans-Austria gas pipeline followed 4 years later, and then the West Austria gas pipeline 10 years later. How can gas be stored? In order to be flexible in the gas business and ensure a secure supply in Austria, we had to find a way to temporarily store gas. OMV was ahead of its time with the development of Europe's first gas storage in Schönkirchensteyersdorf in 1974. Growing up isn't always easy. When the world is shaken by 2 oil crises in the 1970s, even the young OMV breaks out in a sweat. But the company doesn't waver, and the course towards international involvement helps stabilize the domestic energy supply and secure it long-term. Drilling record. On May 31st, OMV successfully drilled a depth of 8,553 meters in Zistersdorf. Hats off. Gasoline without lead? Environmental awareness becomes a key issue in the 1980s, as the first unleaded gas line is introduced in Austria. OMV demonstrates its sense of responsibility for the environment. The takeover of Oxy Libya assets in 1985 is what ultimately makes OMV an international energy company. Regional, national, international, as it should be. OMV goes public. In the first step towards privatization, 300,000 OMV shares are sold to private investors nationally and internationally within 3 days in 1987. A great success. With the acquisition of the German Burghausen refinery, the Austrian company now has an international presence in the downstream business as well. An OMV filling station? Today it's a given, but back then still very new. In 1990, the first green-blue filling station opened in Vienna Auersthal. Highest volume shares on the Vienna Stock Exchange. Just 2 years after the first stock market launch, another 10% of capital stock is privatized and receives an enthusiastic response from investors. When IPIC from Abu Dhabi acquires a 19.6% interest in the Austrian company, the privately owned shares exceed 50% for the first time. A former state-owned enterprise becomes a thriving private company. OMV filling stations in neighboring countries as well? Of course. In 1991, OMV enters the international filling station business. And the opening of the first VIVA shop is celebrated in 1994. A croissant, perhaps? Or a coffee? At the end of the 4th decade, the internationalization also becomes optically visible. OMV changes its name to OMV. The umlaut still remains in Austrian hearts, especially in their pronunciation. already an established name in Europe but still far from its goal. In 1998, OMV acquires a 25% interest in the industry giant Borealis, a petrochemical company. And even today, as OMV holds a 36% interest, Borealis is still one of the group's profit earners, also in times of crisis. In 2003, OMV celebrated the largest domestic oil discovery in the Vienna Basin, equal to 4.5 million barrels of oil. At the time, that was roughly one-third of the Austrian annual production. After intensive negotiations, 51% of the Romanian oil and gas company is acquired. As a result, group sales officially go through the roof. Within just 2 years, revenues double and OMV becomes a market leader in Central and Eastern Europe. In 2006, OMV also acquires a stake in Turkey's oil company Petrol Ofisi and expands its filling station network through Turkey. OMV Austria at its best. In 2010, the tireless pursuit of new improved technology developed in the company brought OMV Austria to the highest production level in history since 1980, with the equivalent of 15.4 million barrels of oil. Once again, OMV proves to be an international expert in mature oil fields. In 2013, the company agrees with Norway's Statoil to take over holdings in the North Sea. An amazing deal with exciting consequences. Because in 2015 Russia's Gazprom expresses interest in getting into the offshore oil business. As part of an asset swap, OMV negotiates access to oil and gas in Russia, the country OMV has had a partnership with for almost 50 years. 2016. 60 years of OMV and proud of it. On the long road to becoming one of the largest listed industrial companies in Austria, OMV handles every challenge with confidence and a sense of responsibility, and will continue to do this in the future.